Although it's nearly too delicious for you, you must be hungry, right? If you started stealing meals from other people or taking things home when no one was looking, it would be embarrassing for you as a classmate. Emily Smith, suppressing her laughter, set a tray of sandwiches on my table. I was offered sandwiches at the reunion, while everyone else was served a full-course meal. Is it not unbelievable? The other students at the table laughed when Emily said those disparaging remarks. To what extent would they go to ridicule me? Thanks for the sandwiches, but it's not fun hanging around people who lack basic decency and empathy, so I'm heading out. I stated sardonically as I got up and took a sandwich. Emily's derisive voice yelled, "Don't worry about paying me for it," as I turned around and made my way out. I paid the same event and meal ticket as everyone else, but I was only able to have sandwiches instead of the entire dinner. They would humiliate me like this. She is deserving of a suitable penalty. I walked out of the arena, picturing the day when Emily may lose her temper. Noah Davis is my name. I am the CEO of a firm that produces and markets tiles both domestically and abroad, and I am in my 30s. Although the title of CEO may seem impressive, the path to this position has not been easy. My dad started the business, but one day when I was still in elementary school, he disappeared, leaving my mom and I alone. As a child, it took me a long time to put together the situation, but the main idea was that my dad was unable to pay off the enormous debts he had accrued. He therefore vanished, leaving it up to us to handle. Later, I learned that even my mother was unaware of the dire financial state of the business. She never imagined it would go this bad. I can still clearly recall the day before my father vanished. Study diligently and try your hardest. Someone will always notice if you give it your all, he remarked, giving me a shoulder pat. His words and demeanor made a deep impression on me because he had never discussed studying or the value of work before. His gaze was focused on a painting on the wall called My Future, even though he was speaking to me. In my school art class, I drew a painting of our 3-person family standing in front of the house I hoped to live in someday. That painting disappeared from the wall the day my dad went missing. It must have accompanied him. I didn't think that picture was very nicely drawn, but I've always wondered why he took it. You can't ask him now, though. I've succeeded in becoming a CEO after conquering those enigmas and obstacles. In my neighborhood, very few individuals are aware of the whole situation. The honest response from people who are familiar with my early years would likely be something along the lines of, "It's amazing how you managed to rebuild everything." I had been turning around my dad's business for almost 10 years when I saw a postcard in the mailbox one day. Printed on it was the name of my old middle school, which brought back memories. It was an invitation to a reunion. After a bit of deliberation, I checked the box to RSVP and sent it back. The hesitation came from unpleasant memories of my middle school days surfacing in my mind. Ever since my dad disappeared, my mom and I have been living each day in pure survival mode. Although the factory and its land were sold off, due to the machinery being surprisingly valuable, we were left with an idle factory and empty land that served no purpose. Meanwhile, our home had been completely stripped away. My mom, who had been a homemaker, started juggling several jobs to scrape by on meager wages. But even my honest and hard-working mom couldn't handle the crushing difficulty of our lives. Eventually, she slipped. One day, she shoplifted from a neighborhood store. The news spread like wildfire, and soon, I was labeled as the shoplifter's son by my classmates, who began giving me the cold shoulder. The worst offender was Emily Smith. She had always been admired for her good looks, intelligence, and popularity, even back then. "Noah, your mom's a thief, right?" she asked one day. "Some things went missing from the classroom recently, too. You didn't take them, right?" "No way. I didn't take anything," I protested. "Okay, I just wanted to make sure." Emily put on an exaggeratedly worried expression, and the other classmates chimed in, jeering. It's gotta be no. As a school kid, those were some of the hardest moments of my life. But the only way to clear my name was to live honestly and prove my innocence through my actions. Then, something happened that made things even worse. An eraser that had gone missing in the classroom turned up inside my bag. Hey, everyone, come here. Look what I found in Noel's bag. Emily's voice rang out. Her words caused a stir throughout the classroom. Of course, it drew attention since the eraser, a girl in our class had lost, was discovered in my bag by none other than Emily. Adding to the drama, she called out in a tone of urgency, claiming she'd found the culprit, which only amplified the commotion. What's going on? Echoed throughout the room. But I had no idea myself. During the previous break, I'd seen Emily touching my bag, so I nervously mustered up the courage to ask her hesitantly. I swear I didn't take it, but earlier, I saw Emily touching my bag. There wasn't anything in it then, right? At my words, Emily muttered, "That's disgusting." With tears welling in her eyes, she turned to the rest of the class. Are you saying I planted it in your bag, Noel? Trying to pin your guilt on the person who found it? That's just low. With that, Emily let out a sob. Seeing her like that, some girls nearby rushed to her side and began comforting her. Obviously, he's the thief. We're on Emily's side. There was no doubt in my mind that Emily had touched my bag an hour earlier. I didn't want to believe it, but it seemed like the only explanation was that she planted the eraser in my bag. I couldn't understand why she'd do something like that, but no one in the class was willing to hear me out anymore. The boys in the class had already started hurling taunts at me. Emily, held by a classmate who said, "Let's go to the nurse's office," glanced back at me for a moment. Her eyes carried a triumphant smirk, and I didn't miss it. Because of this past, I hesitated about attending the reunion. The bad memories resurfaced, but surely everyone had grown up by now. I also wondered if Emily even remembered what had happened back then. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to talk about the past, but maybe now I could get along with everyone. With that hope in mind, I waited anxiously for the day of the reunion. Before I knew it, the reunion day arrived amidst my busy schedule. Wearing a tailored suit, I headed to the hotel where the reunion was being held. Several of my former classmates were already laughing and chatting with flushed faces, probably having had a few drinks before the event. Not having any friends I could truly call close, I aimlessly wandered around the venue. Then I heard a familiar voice nearby, followed by my name being called. "Oh, is that you, Noel? You look so different now." When I turned around, it was indeed Emily who had called me. She had been beautiful even back in school, but now her beauty had only become more refined. She was dressed in what appeared to be an expensive gown, paired with high-end accessories. What hadn't changed since our childhood was not just her striking appearance. Even today, a group of people surrounded her, vying for her attention. "Do you remember Noel?" Emily said to the classmates around her in a tone that almost sounded mocking. Then she continued, "This guy once put someone's eraser in his own bag and tried to blame it on me. I wonder how he has the nerve to show up to the reunion." As Emily spoke, I could feel my body temperature drop sharply. So she did remember what had happened back then. But whether she genuinely believed her own words or her memory had been altered by years of telling lies, she was still saying things I had no recollection of doing. I thought we'd be able to understand each other now that we were adults, but it seemed I was terribly mistaken. "That's not true. I told you back then, too. I really didn't do it." Emily snorted at my words and replied in a cold voice, "Too late now. Even if you apologized, I wouldn't forgive you. By the way, what's with that outfit?" She scanned me from head to toe and then burst into laughter as she continued, "For someone who was so poor they couldn't even afford food, you're wearing quite the fancy suit. Even if you dress above your station, it's pathetic when the person inside is still useless. Either way, what do you do for a living?" As she looked at me with a mocking expression, I hesitated on how to answer. Even if I told her I was a CEO, she'd probably just say my company would go bankrupt soon and use it as another opportunity to insult me. After some deliberation, I decided to keep it simple and said, I work at a company that makes and installs tiles. Emily's reaction was predictably condescending. Tiles? She said with a smirk, covering her mouth as she added, so a subcontractor. Must be tough, but making things that people just step on really suits you. Keep making those nice, comfy tiles for us. By the way, my company's here. I'm in charge of a $30 million deal tomorrow. It's a lot of responsibility, you know. She said that proudly and handed me her business card. The card bore the name of a major real estate corporation. Did working for a publicly traded company make her think she was superior and justified in looking down on employees of subcontracting companies? We take pride in manufacturing and selling our products. Why should we have to endure being looked down on so much? Even if Emily still felt like a victim of the past, her words were far too much. I was about to leave the venue when she stopped me by saying, Are you trying to run away? I'm not running away. It's just that staying here with someone who refuses to listen to reason will only ruin both our moods. When I said that with conviction, Emily's face turned bright red with anger. Don't get cocky just because you're no. Fine, whatever. As one of the organizers of this reunion, it's my job to make sure even people like you have a good time. I don't know if you'll find anyone to talk to, but at least enjoy the food. With that, Emily walked off with her entourage in tow. Realizing the reunion wasn't going to be as enjoyable as I had hoped, I let out an involuntary sigh. An announcement played, saying the toast would begin shortly along with the start of the course meal. So I settled into the seat with my name on it. When the toast was called, I took a sip of beer, and somehow it lifted my spirits just a little. Apparently, the course meals here had a great reputation, with many couples celebrating anniversaries using this venue. Back in middle school, I hardly had any close friends to talk to, but with a drink in hand and some delicious food, I thought maybe I could get along with my table mates this time. As I waited for the food, imagining how things might go, my meal still didn't arrive. When the classmates sitting next to me started their second course, I realized something was definitely wrong. I called over a staff member and informed them that my course meal hadn't been served. The staff looked confused and simply said, We received specific instructions from the organizer. Standing up to confirm with the reunion organizer, I found Emily standing right next to me. In her hand was a plate of sandwiches. Even sandwiches are too good for you, but you must be hungry. It'd be embarrassing as your classmate if you started sneaking bites from other people's food or taking stuff home when no one's looking. Emily placed the sandwiches on my table and said this while stifling her laughter. Her words made the classmates at the same table chuckle. How far does she plan to go in mocking me? I stood up with the sandwiches in hand and said to Emily, Thanks for this, but it's not fun to hang out with someone who lacks consideration and empathy for others, so I'm leaving. Turning my back and heading for the exit, I heard Emily's mocking voice call out, Don't worry about paying me back for it. Even though I paid the same venue and meal fees as everyone else, I was stuck with sandwiches instead of the proper meal. She had humiliated me like this. Someone like her deserves an appropriate punishment. Imagining a future where Emily loses her composure, I left the venue. The next day at work, I received a report from the office staff. A senior employee who was supposed to attend an important business meeting today had fallen ill and couldn't come to work. If the contract were finalized, it would result in a significant deal. I had wanted to entrust this important meeting to the senior employee, but health issues couldn't be helped. I wanted to find someone else to fill in, but all the employees were swamped with their own work, making it hard to rearrange schedules quickly. Got it. I'll attend the meeting myself, so let them know not to worry and to take the time to recover. With that, I immediately started preparing for the meeting. Once I had everything ready for the afternoon meeting, I took some gifts and headed to the meeting location. The meeting was being held in a room at a major publicly traded real estate company. This was a crucial discussion to determine whether the tiles we manufacture would be used in their upcoming designer condominiums. Whatever the outcome, our company has a policy of only taking on projects that we find worthwhile. If a deal isn't satisfactory, we don't take it. That's the stance we maintain because short-term transactions never lead to lasting success. As a company, it's essential to handle projects that motivate both me and my employees. When I entered the meeting room, the employees on the other side, who had been waiting, all stood up at once. "I'm sorry. Our assigned employee couldn't make it due to illness today, so I'm here in his place. I hope we can have a productive discussion today. Thank you for your understanding." One of the men standing at the edge of the line stepped forward to greet me. His name tag read Scene Carter, and with a gentle expression, he said, "Not at all. We appreciate you, as the CEO, taking the time to meet with us personally despite your busy schedule. Thank you." As I handed out my business card to everyone, one employee stared at the card in complete shock, standing frozen in place. That was, without a doubt, Emily Smith. "It's been a while. Thank you for everything you've done." One of Emily's company executives glanced between her and me, whispering quietly. Scene, as if speaking on behalf of their thoughts, opened his mouth. "This is surprising. Do you two know each other?" "We were classmates in middle school. She treated me well at the reunion yesterday." When I said that, a sense of relief spread among the executives. It seemed they were eager to finalize this deal, knowing that the CEO of the client company was acquainted with one of their employees. They were likely hoping it would help smooth the negotiations. But in truth, my relationship with Emily couldn't be worse. Of course, Emily was well aware of this, yet she could clearly feel the executive's expectations pressing down on her. Her face turned pale, and she began trembling visibly. "Why didn't you tell me earlier that you were the CEO of the company we're working with? Would your attitude have changed if you'd known? If that's the case, it only makes me trust your company even less." When I replied coldly, the atmosphere in the room froze instantly. With all eyes now on me, I decided to clarify something important. Our company takes great pride in the tiles we manufacture. Do you see our products as nothing more than things to be stepped on? These are items we've poured our hearts into, like nurturing a child. I won't tolerate them being treated with disrespect. Aside from Emily, no one else seemed to understand what I was talking about. Scene quickly responded, "Not at all," and passionately spoke about how much they valued our tiles and the high expectations they had for them. Hearing his words, I felt reassured and nodded. "That's good to hear. Based on what I've heard from one of your employees, I was genuinely concerned that our products wouldn't be treated with care. If that were the case, even though this $30 million deal is significant for us, I would have had no choice but to terminate the contract." The mention of terminating the contract caused a stir among the executives. Their eyes naturally turned to Emily. It made sense from the flow of the conversation. Emily was the only one likely to have made such remarks to me. Did one of our employees say something inappropriate? If so, I'd like to know the details, Scene asked with a worried expression. I candidly recounted the events that had transpired recently. Emily made remarks that belittled subcontractors and showed disdain for tile manufacturing. I was honestly considering pulling out of the deal because of it. At my words, Emily hastily tried to defend herself. "Wait a minute. Did I really say something like that? Our company values subcontractors, and they're essential to what we do. I would never say something to demean them. Any of our classmates could back up what I'm saying, but don't worry, I'm not planning to go that far." A bit more composed now, Emily took a deep breath before continuing her excuses. "Maybe I said something as a joke in the moment, but come on, cut me some slack. As a former classmate, this is business, so let's not bring up anything unrelated from now on, okay?" What a ridiculous thing to say. Well, it's true that bringing too much personal history into business isn't ideal. I value the character and integrity of the people I work with. To be honest, I was still unsure if partnering with Emily's company was the right move. You won't mistreat any of my employees if the deal goes through, right? Like replacing their core meal with a sandwich, for example. Emily probably thought I was making a bad joke. Scene laughed and said, "There's no way anyone would actually do something like that. That's just absurd." There it is, unfortunately. If a business partner's employee has that kind of character, wouldn't it make you lose all motivation to negotiate? Emily, whose color had just returned, suddenly paled again. The executives glanced at her with a mix of disbelief and concern, as if silently asking, "Did you really do that?" Seemingly cornered, Emily raised her voice and turned the blame on me. "Well, he tried to steal a classmate's eraser back in the day, and when he almost got caught, he tried to pin the blame on me. You can't trust someone like that. If anything, we should be the ones refusing to work with him." Hearing such outrageous claims, Scene reprimanded her sharply. Perhaps out of sheer panic, Emily began ranting about how terrible I supposedly was, slinging insults in an attempt to justify herself. Although I felt bad about bringing up the past in front of the executives, I explained what had happened in middle school. I shared how an eraser I'd never touched was found in my bag and how Emily had smirked at me as she walked away afterward. While it was subjective, the events were true. The executives muttered, "That's awful." "Don't believe a word he says." Emily snapped. "Guilty people always claim they didn't do it." "Are you talking about yourself?" "Because we've all already lost all trust in you," Scene said coldly, adding, "We will not consider working with any company other than his." "Why?" Emily looked unconvinced. Scene, exasperated, explained the situation. It turned out that the tiles for the planned designer condominium heavily relied on my company's patented technology. The tiles, which would be used in the hallways and bathrooms, weren't just stylish, but also offered unique functionality that no other company could replicate. Given that the concept was central to the project, partnering with my company was non-negotiable. Unaware of this, Emily had been boasting about not needing to work with us. How little she seemed to understand her own company's operations. It was likely her looks had carried her through life so far. With such ignorance about her job was concerning, to say the least. Sensing my unease, Scene announced that Emily would be removed from the project. Why? I don't understand why I'm being taken off this. I can negotiate a better deal with him. The executives looked to me for my opinion, but I firmly shook my head. I have no intention of negotiating with her. If she remains on this project, I'll have to decline the deal entirely. When I said this decisively, Emily slumped in defeat and said nothing further. In the end, my company and Emily's employer successfully signed the $30 million contract. As Scene had promised, Emily was no longer involved during the follow-up discussions. Without her presence, I was able to negotiate calmly, and the highly sought-after designer condominium was nearing completion. It was a high-priced property in a prime location, but the high demand from buyers meant it was an attractive place to live. Emily must regret missing out on being part of such a significant project, but with her attitude towards subcontractors, it was only a matter of time before her flaws would have been exposed. The real estate company's decision to remove her was undoubtedly the right call. A few months later, I learned something even more shocking. I had assumed Emily's removal was to smooth over relations with me and ensure the negotiations went well. But it turned out there was another reason. It seems there had been a series of thefts in Emily's office, and the culprit was none other than Emily herself. Come to think of it, items frequently went missing in my class when we were kids, and Emily and I had always been in the same class. Perhaps she had a tendency to steal all along. Now that she's reportedly resigned, I hope she has found a new job and learned to stop looking down on subcontractors or taking what doesn't belong to her. Several years have passed since then. Our company's performance has been steadily climbing, and we're now handling more projects than we can accommodate with our current capacity. We're even considering investing in new equipment to meet the growing demand for our products. By working earnestly, many companies have not only recognized our technical expertise, but also resonated with our passion, choosing to partner with us. In business, the mindset and values you bring to your work are undoubtedly crucial factors. One day, as I was left alone in the workshop outside the office reflecting on this, I was startled by an unexpected visitor. The person who appeared was none other than my dad, who had disappeared years ago. "Where have you been all this time? We were so worried about you." Questions like whether he had contacted my mom or where he had been living flooded my mind, but I couldn't put them into words. My dad stayed silent for a while, but with the gentle smile I remembered from long ago, he spoke softly. "You've grown into someone remarkable. See, when you work hard, someone always notices. That's why you've been able to build your company into what it is today." After saying that, he turned to leave. I wasn't really in a position to say anything grand. Was he planning to walk away just like that? But unlike when I was a child, I had a feeling I'd see him again somewhere. Instead of chasing after him as he headed for the exit, I called out to his back, "Come visit again next time. Take your time and teach me about running a business. Neither Mom nor I hold any grudges against you." He stopped in his tracks, raised his hand slowly while still facing away, and then he eventually walked away. I followed him to the exit a little later, but as expected, he was already gone. Would he come back again? As I thought about this, something unfamiliar caught my eye. There was a drawing taped to the wall near the entrance. Seeing the title, "My Future," written on the drawing, I couldn't help but smile. In the picture, 2 adults and a boy were standing in front of a beautiful house, smiling happily together.